Shirley Wilson is a good friend and your librarian, and she stopped me out of worship this morning and asked me to tell you that she has gathered books and videos on these 5 figures, and she wants you to stop by the library, and she said she can clean up my mess with these books. These figures inspire us, and they compel us to come face to face with our own commitments and our own vocational identities. Our text is, interestingly, having just come from worship and this splendid sermon, our text is from the Sermon on the Mount. Jesus speaking, "Blessed are the pure in heart, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of God." In David Lean's intriguing film, A Passage to India, a wise older woman, Mrs. Moore, played by Peggy Ashcroft, observes that India forces one to come face to face with oneself. It can be rather disturbing. Our scene is a disturbing yet epic-making picture, the enormous struggle for justice and equality in a country and an era beset by injustice, inequality, factionalism, and violence. Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, 1869 to 1948, is at the center of this freedom story, which is one of the marvels of the 20th century. To borrow a phrase coined by Reinhold Niebuhr, Gandhi is a moral man in an immoral society. The youngest child of his father's 4th wife, Gandhi is born in the capital of the small state of Porbandar in western India on the Arabian Sea. It is under British rule. His father, Karamchand, is the prime minister. He is a competent and impartial administrator without the blessing of a formal education. His integrity is exemplary and his son's mind incorruptible. He is a strong role model at work, at home. The atmosphere of the home is that of tolerance, fasting, vegetarianism, and a heaping spoonful of authoritarianism. Young Mohan Gandhi is especially close to his mother, Putlibai. He admires her intelligence and strong common sense, deeply religious. She fasts frequently and dedicates her life to home and temple. She worships at a Pranami temple where both Hindu and scriptures of the Quran of Islam are read tolerantly side by side. Little Gandhi is a passive youngster. He is not an exceptional student. He dislikes sports. He enjoys extended walks alone. Shy and fearful of evil spirits, he scurries home after school, afraid lest anyone should poke fun at me. He is a self-acknowledged coward and is haunted by the fear of ghosts and serpents. He cannot bear to sleep without a light in the room. He also enjoys some aspects of rebellion, such as smoking, meat eating, stealing, and private atheism. Those are good ones. Knowing what we now know, it doesn't make much sense. Although many would not have chosen such a weak person, one day history and providential forces will lift up and use this timid one as a renowned leader of transforming courage who will shake and shape the lives of millions. At age 11, get this, Gandhi is united to his wife, Kasturbai, in a marriage arranged by their parents, of course, the daughter of a Porbandar merchant. She too is 11. Their personalities are strikingly different. He is non-athletic and in many ways a scaredy cat. She knows no fear. The early adult years of their marriage reveal a British-educated lawyer who assumes the authoritarian manner and short temper of his father, only to run headlong into a non-passive rock of a wife who will not put up with such business. Their arguments sometimes result in periods of silence which linger several days. Yet the two somehow grow toward each other, and the husband's authoritarian posture is modified. Lakshmadi's Gandhi, young Mohan's lawyer brother, pledges to finance his formal education, but not a preferred career in medicine. Father intended you for the bar, he is commanded. Thus, for 3 foundational years, 1888 to 91, beginning at age 19, Gandhi studies law at the University of London, as is the custom among India's merchant elite. His wife and infant child remain in the homeland. Student Gandhi dresses in the manner of a brown Englishman. There he is fed by liberating and invigorating dinner conversations among student barristers in an exquisite dining hall at London's Inner Temple. There he also commits himself to the study of ethical issues, that is, to the study of what ought to be done in given situations. There he also studies Latin, French, chemistry, physics. There he also becomes a leader in the London Vegetarian Society, which is made up of socialists, humanitarians, idealists, and those in rebellion against late Victorianism. These non-conforming colleagues introduce Gandhi to the Bible and to a critique of industrialism. Many of them are also advocates of a simple lifestyle. Gandhi's first published articles appear in their weekly journal, The Vegetarian. When he returns home, Gandhi is an apparent failure in the practice of law. In England, barrister Gandhi had been treated with kindness and respect, yet back in India, English leaders now treat him with distrust, rudeness, disdain. As Gandhi later recalled, this shock changed the course of my life. Gandhi's prophetic training ground is South Africa. At age 23, he accepts an offer from a firm in Natal. The decision sets his life on a recreative course. A transformation takes place on a pilgrimage between Durban and Pretoria. Gandhi enters a court in Durban. There, a European magistrate demands that he remove his turban. The small, offended Indian refuses, and he leaves the courtroom in a huff. Shortly thereafter, Gandhi is traveling to Pretoria by train, where he is kicked out of a first-class compartment. On the same journey, a stagecoach driver beats him for refusing to give his seat to a European. He is referred to as a coolie. The belittling term is related to the word untouchable, and as Gandhi is painfully aware, it carries a contemptuous connotations. Hotels will not admit him. A dramatic change occurs. He absorbs into his being the deep disease of color prejudice. Gandhi is filled with prophetic imagination and resolve. He will try, if possible, to root out the disease and suffer the hardship in the process. Gandhi the passive becomes Gandhi the aggressive. He will never be the same retiring person who had longed to play the accommodating brown English gentleman. Now Gandhi will discover his own authentic selfhood and calling as he awakens abruptly, as he is discovered by India, and as he discovers India. For the shy lawyer who had succumbed to stage fright is now drafted by Indians to lead their crusade against Natal's governing body, which is plotting to deny their right to vote. A late bloomer, Gandhi suddenly walks to the center stage of human history. His petitions and efforts are politically unsuccessful in terms of keeping the Indian right to vote, yet he is prophetically successful in exposing a brutal monster whose many vicious heads include segregation, racial discrimination, oppression, injustice, and inequality. He becomes secretary of the Natal Indian Congress, which he founds. With calm authority, he stimulates the public attention and press attention in South Africa, India, and Britain. What is the secret to this tiny figure who is giving such spirit and unity to the Natal Indians? This question is not only on the lips of the Natal locals, it is being asked by news media throughout the entire British Empire. While bringing his family to Durban in 1897, Gandhi is attacked and beaten by a white mob. When the Secretary of State for the colonies offers to prosecute the offenders, the strange diminutive leader refuses. "I do not want to prosecute anyone," he responds calmly, knowingly. What is the use of getting there punished? During the Boer War, 1899 to 1902, patriotic Gandhi wins a medal for bravery and founds an Indian ambulance corps. He feels that Indians residing in England ought to do their bit in the war. Gandhi organizes, after a brief return to India, he organizes in South Africa a large protest in Johannesburg in 1906. It is against the government's proposed legislation, which would require Indians and Chinese to be fingerprinted, to register, and carry ID cards. He and followers pledged themselves to defy this ordinance, the so-called Black Act, even if it is made a law. They will not submit themselves, they say, to an immoral law. Their allegiance is to a higher moral truth. However, they are prepared to receive the consequences of lawbreaking. If they refuse to obey a law, says Gandhi, they are also willing to accept the penalty for its breach. They are prepared to go to jail. Thus, we have the dynamic emergence of satyagraha, which translates truth force or soul force or firmness of truth and love. It combines the Sanskrit word satya, truth and love, with the word agraha, firmness. This approach, a creative form of nonviolent resistance to evil, is radically unique. Through satyagraha, the wrongdoer is resisted not by violence, but rather by telling the truth in a manner that is willing to suffer and even to absorb the adversary's violent punishment in love. In 1914, Gandhi leaves South Africa without having made a serious dent in that nation's moral dilemma, yet South Africa did so much to shape Gandhi. South Africa was his training ground, his foundation, the place of Satyagraha's birth. Surely it is ironic that South Africa gave birth to the power which one day will help check, balance, resist, and reform its own racism and injustice. While in London at the beginning of World War I, Gandhi establishes an ambulance corps made up of Indians residing in England. Eventually, however, his position on war shifts entirely. I should not voluntarily participate in its governance wars, he declares, and I should risk imprisonment and even the gallows if I was forced to take up arms or otherwise take part in its military operations. Returning to his native land, Gandhi sets forth on a non-militaristic vision of freedom from colonialism and independence for the 350 million people of India. The inhabitants of India do not constitute an inferior race of people who are destined to be ruled by Britain's colonial power. Rather, India is populated by persons whose values are focused upon creativity, love, and the inalienable right of freedom. Before Gandhi, the movement toward national independence was a movement of the classes and the intelligentsia. Through Gandhi, it becomes a movement of the masses. Through his efforts and nonviolent strategies, significant segments of the world population will experience greater freedom up to our present day. This movement will take more than 3 decades to come to fruition, and it should be noted that freedom in this context wields a twofold payoff. The recipient of freedom will not be India alone. Britain, too, is being freed. The power that will finally concede liberty to the oppressed is being liberated from the role of oppressor. Curiously, Gandhi ministers not only to India, but also to Imperial England. Caste is another crucial Gandhian focus. What to do with the cruel world of closed caste? Gandhi does not simply speak and write against the evils of caste. His commitment is lived out personally, dramatically. His adopted daughter is an outcast. He identifies vicariously with the masses. Wearing peasant garb, he often travels third class. His lifestyle is simple and his face bears a pleasant smile. More often than not, he smiles winsomely. This demeanor helps produce trust among the poor multitudes with whom he identifies so reverently. When Gandhi lodges, he frequently stays in outcast colonies. In these settings, he is visited by untouchables and by government leaders, by poor and by elite. In India, there are 4 castes: the priestly, the warrior, the merchant or farmer, to which Gandhi belongs. The name Gandhi means grocer. And the 4th class, the serving class. Underneath these are the untouchables, the outcasts, some 70 million in number. Boldly, Gandhi calls the untouchables the children of God, Harijans. And by his crusade against untouchability, Gandhi does more than any living person to undermine the caste system. The Gandhi personality and demeanor are woven with drama and fascination. Gandhi, the unusual leader, utterly captivates the press with his unusual appearance and simple belongings. His head is shaven, his ears are large, his frame is frail, his front teeth are absent. He wears a dhoti and sandals. He is a simple person, and he is a complex person. He is a compelling blend of patience and impatience. On the one hand, he is studiously diplomatic. On the other hand, he is strikingly aggressive. He is stern yet caring, stubborn yet compromising. He is spiritual and shrewd, humble and audacious, contemplative and calculating. He is bright yet not brilliant. His voice is soft, conversational, non-oratorical in style. A unique, if not somewhat odd leader, Gandhi also possesses uncanny, even mystical, personal and political intuition and timing. Across the circling years, Gandhi brilliantly utilizes the press. Some say manipulates the press. Regardless, he is the master of the dramatic moment, and the news media provide a dynamic vehicle through which India is able to claim her case for freedom before the international community. Everywhere Gandhi treks, the crowds press in as the media press in. The well-meaning and adoring massive crowds often make his work seem harder, yet the crowds inevitably bring energy and possibility to the freedom revolution. While they sometimes deprive their leader of precious rest, without them the movement would not exist. Gandhi patiently bears the crowds because he realizes, as Thomas Merton suggests, that the masses of India are awakening in him. They who have been silent for centuries find their voice in his voice. Critics complain that Gandhi seems hard and crafty. Admirers explain that he is politically astute, that his political timing is both practical and careful. It is meticulously sensitive to the sufferings of the dispossessed. However, the source spring of Gandhi's prophetic and pastoral leadership is not his prescient political astuteness. While he is keenly political, Hinduism is always his indispensable anchor. He is morally impelled. Indeed, he is convinced that he is impelled by God. Yes, he is inordinately active. He is constantly speaking, writing, marching, and strategizing. One day his writings will fill over 100 volumes, yet his underpinnings are ultimately spiritual. His spiritual life is a prelude to his work and activism. It even engulfs his work and activism. He who is on the move is also non-feverish, meditative. At the core of this spiritual leader is an unwavering conviction that his personal destiny is enveloped by a divine calling. Servant leadership becomes his pathway to God. Service for Gandhi becomes the service of India. It is a sacred calling. It is a vocation that has come to him without his own seeking, and he is deeply aware that he has an aptitude for it. Those are his words. Thus, in jail, Gandhi confesses to a friend, God, in his infinite mercy, has chosen, it seems to me, that I be instrumental in bringing forth India's freedom. I therefore cannot afford to die yet. He is a mystical leader who rises at 4 a.m. for personal devotions. His brave journey of activism will be fostered and fed by a journey that is inward and spiritually grounded. During times when everything that once was nailed down is suddenly coming loose, Gandhi breathes an air of balanced certainty. His calmness issues a sense of stability, even serenity amid treacherous and stormy political dilemmas. For the preeminent goal of his striving and pining, he confesses in his words, is to see God face to face. Even so, Gandhi will not retreat to a cave in the mountains as other religious figures do. The writings of Tolstoy have overwhelmed him with the belief that the kingdom of God is within you. He vows that he will carry his cave within his own person as he leads and strategizes for justice and mercy. Gandhi is a self-described practical idealist. His strategic method of nonviolence is not a cloistered virtue to be practiced by the individual for peace and final salvation, but it is a rule of conduct for society. He believes that the spiritual and the social, the personal and the political are inseparable and should not be compartmentalized. Following the London years, a poet and business leader named Rashanda befriended Gandhi and influenced him greatly. He suggested to Gandhi that there is continuity among religions and that none should be regarded as being superior or inferior to another because they all seek to bring the worshiper to the presence of God. From the Hindu scriptures, the Bhagavad Gita, Gandhi is instilled with an unbending attitude of passionate single-mindedness in regard to his vision, causes, goals, and sense of duty. Gandhi personally believes that Hinduism is his own path to salvation. Yet some observe that Gandhi's own life becomes a model of Christian living. Furthermore, his nonviolent method of resistance, satyagraha, witnesses to the suffering love of the cross of Jesus. In his own words, the New Testament, especially the Sermon on the Mount, went straight to my heart. Jesus, says Gandhi, was the most active resistor known perhaps to history. This was nonviolence par excellence. Gandhi speaks of the ethical and spiritual growth which comes to nations and individuals through the agony of the cross and in no other way. Joy comes not out of the inflicting of pain, but of pain voluntarily borne by oneself. He adores the Christian hymn, "When I survey the wondrous cross," especially its final words, "Love so amazing, so divine, demands my soul, my life, my all." As tolerant, ecumenical, and non-fundamentalist Christians study and observe Gandhi, they come to respect him as one who lives and serves as a bridge between their religion and his. While speaking in Buffalo, New York in 1926, the American prophet Reinhold Niebuhr pictures Gandhi as one whose belief in the Sermon on the Mount has led him to try to overcome evil by smothering it. Nothing is as distinctive, Niebuhr preaches, as the looming of this figure on the horizon of the world, a man who says he is not a Christian, but who follows Christ, who proves that the fight is not between those who have accepted Christ and those who have not, but those who do not understand the genius of Christ. Many admiring Christians see in Gandhi a spirit that both inspires them and shames them. Analyzing his own experience with Gandhi, the revered American Methodist missionary E. Stanley Jones later confessed that Gandhi taught him more of the Spirit of Christ than anyone else, either from East or West. For Jones, Gandhi was a Hindu who was deeply Christian. Gandhi was an inspiring prophetic beacon used by God to help Christianize unchristian Christianity. Wow. I'd like to be able to write a phrase like that. That is, he who is not a Christian lives a Christian life. Yes, Gandhi is a Hindu and he will die a Hindu, yet his enormous moral stature makes him a theologically important person for Christians. And in light of his admiration of Jesus, observers are intrigued by the historic fact that Gandhi is resisting the power of a formally Christian regime, Anglican Britain. Three major efforts in nonviolent resistance are waged by Gandhi, 1920 to 22, 30 to 34, and 40 to 42. In one case, a study, it dramatically illustrates his prophetic leadership. In 1930, he vows to march to Ghandi, to the sea, 240 miles away. There he will make salt. Therefore, he will defy the government's salt law, for only the government is allowed to make salt. Toward Ghandi marched 78 volunteers and their 61-year-old eccentric-looking, half-naked, hollow-faced little leader who wears big glasses and a loincloth and carries a bamboo walking stick. At Ghandi, an entire nation and much of the world come face to face with truth force, soul force, satyagraha. 60,000 protesters go to jail. We possess a capacity to suffer, Gandhi and followers proclaim. We have a willingness to suffer, and through this willingness we shall absorb and overcome your willingness to afflict suffering. The method is profoundly simple. Satyagraha, soul force, and ahimsa, nonviolence, are not for the weak, says Gandhi. They are instruments to be used by the strong. E. Stanley Jones explained Gandhi's method accordingly. We will match our capacity to suffer against your capacity to inflict the suffering, our soul force against your physical force. We will not hate you, but we will not obey you. Do what you like, and we will wear you down by our capacity to suffer. And in the winning of the freedom, we will so appeal to your heart and conscience that we will win you. Gandhi instructs his followers that their readiness to suffer will light the torch of freedom, which can never be put out. He insists that suffering is the badge of the human race, not the sword of the human race. Gandhi embraces suffering both for its spiritual benefits and for its political impact. Suffering is a curious weapon to be used by the unarmed. By the unarmed Indians against the armed British. It is valued politically for its capacity to influence international opinion and spiritually for its capacity to bring about reconciliation and conversion. These acts of going to jail set loose something miraculous. As Jones has said, a flood of pent-up sacrifice is loosed. Thousands follow the Mahatma's example by going to jail in the forthcoming years. 200,000 go to jail, and many are the cream of India's future leadership. Jawaharlal Nehru himself will be jailed 14 times. Jail is a spiritual experience. Jail is also a training ground for those who will lead the new nation. Henry David Thoreau's essay on civil disobedience also helps shape the method. Gandhi had read Thoreau's essay first while in a South African jail. Throughout the years of his own civil disobedience, Gandhi enjoys reciting Thoreau's witty words from jail. I did not feel for a moment confined, and the walls seemed a great waste of stone and mortar. As we watch itself work itself out, Gandhi's method is, of course, imperfect and not totally removed from ambiguity and from the taint of what we might call a lesser form of evil. Gandhi's boycott of British cotton, a righteous boycott on the one hand, leads to the undernourishment of innocent children in Manchester. But the key to his method, according to Gandhi's distant admirer Reinhold Niebuhr, is that it endures more suffering than it inflicts. Gandhi's form and manner of nonviolence, Niebuhr says, foster a cooperative attitude within the areas of disagreement by refusing to injure deliberately the wrongdoer and by submitting voluntarily to the penalty for breaking an unjust law. I am therefore here to submit not to a light penalty, but to the highest penalty, Gandhi says to one magistrate. I do not ask you for mercy. Again, the Sermon on the Mount is at the center of Gandhi's practice of satyagraha. Nonviolence for Gandhi is a vehicle of love. As Reinhold Niebuhr sees it, Gandhi's method, penetrated by the ideal of love and the spirit of moral goodwill, is devoid of resentment and selfish ambition. Gandhi's strategic method includes what Niebuhr calls creative coercion. Creative coercion, but not physical, tyrannical, or violent coercion. Therefore, Niebuhr, the preeminent ethicist theologian, praises Gandhi's technique as being educative, a very vivid and dramatic method of education. I mean, world education. Vividly and dramatically, the oppressed suffer by taking into themselves the hatred of their oppressors and by enduring the legal penalties of their civil disobedience. It is a spiritual experience, for when Gandhi is on trial, who is really on trial? In a legalistic sense, Gandhi, but in a spiritual sense, England is on trial. Fasting, as Martin Luther King Jr. will utilize 2.5 decades later, fasting is integrally related to the nonviolent resistance method. Hurt is responded to by receiving the hurt into one's own being. The fasts in Gandhi's mind and heart do not constitute political blackmail. They are a deeply spiritual strategy which focuses minds and hearts upon issues and situations that are morally indefensible. Fasting allows the Mahatma, which means the great soul, to become absorbed in the moral and spiritual issues at stake, and fasting also demonstrates the power to change the moral and spiritual attitudes of the individuals and the groups against whom he is fasting. It is a form of creative coercion. By taking pain upon himself in fasting, morally creative alternatives are sometimes discovered by those against whom he fasts. By suffering himself, those who are afflicting suffering are often creatively and redemptively coerced and inspired to change toward a higher good. It is the power of suffering over the power of evil. Gandhi's fasting is sacred, political, public, and educative. It is both an act of worship and it is an act of application of moral political pressure. In fasting for the untouchable's right to enter the temple, Gandhi symbolically absorbs into his own personhood the pride and prejudice of an entire nation. In fasting, Gandhi seeks to liberate the privileged class from blindness and the outcasts from self-hate. Simultaneously, fasting is both a spiritual experience and a political act. In 1934, Gandhi resigns as the leader of the National Indian Congress Party. He refocuses his energies on the rural poor, who make up almost, get this, 85% of the national population. Rural India must be reached, persuaded, and educated regarding Swaraj, or self-rule. He moves, therefore, to central India, to the village of Sevagram, meaning the village of service. Sevagram becomes the center of his crusade against intouchability. There he promotes a simple lifestyle which is now synonymous with his person and name. He advocates weaving, spinning, and other simple industries which can be accomplished within the home. The image of Gandhi seated at handloom and spinning wheel is displayed in newsreels and newspapers throughout the world. I saw those newsreels as a child. Here I want to recall into our presence and now famous, it's a watershed visit. It's a visit to Gandhi's ashram circa 1936 by the preeminent African-American mystic and theologian Howard Thurman. To Thurman, Gandhi predicts, personally to Thurman, he predicts, this is amazing, that an African-American will one day do for the United States what he is precisely doing for India, using the ministry of nonviolence. Gandhi asks Thurman to sing for him, "Were You There When They Crucified My Lord?" Gandhi later sends Thurman a strand of material that he has personally spun. Of course, these are quasi-sacramental acts, acts of communion and bonding. Thus, Gandhi, Thurman, and Martin Luther King Jr. and the American Civil Rights Movement are bonded eternally. And as we know, 2.5 decades later, King will fulfill Gandhi's prediction to Howard Thurman, and as David Halberstam has pointed out, he becomes the historical lineal descendant of Gandhi. In the summer of 1942, Gandhi calls for Britain's departure from his homeland. Under tremendous pressure from Hitler's war machine, Britain responds dramatically by jailing the leaders of the Indian National Congress. Violence erupts. It's met with severity. No resolution seems possible. In 1947, a form of freedom is realized, but it is a great personal disappointment to the Mahatma due to the proposed partitioning of India and Pakistan. While Gandhi and other leaders are in jail, Muslim and Hindu discord accelerates, riots and killings are commonplace. When freedom arrives, 2 new dominions are formed, India and Muslim Pakistan. Disappointed, Gandhi nevertheless pours himself into an effort to infuse healing. He visits the embittered regions, touching, coaxing, scolding, teaching, inspiring. In making this sojourn, he is extremely vulnerable. Some Hindu and Muslim leaders blame Gandhi personally for the separation and discord, yet he fasts, and the Calcutta riots cease in September 1947. He fasts, and peace comes to riot-torn Delhi in 1948. Throughout his heroic adult life of religious servanthood and political activism, the creatively conversive Gandhi is also a moderator and reconciler. But how in the world will he be able to moderate so many hateful and seemingly irreconcilable factions? His ministry appears impossible as he considers the British and the Indians, the Muslims and the Hindus, the Hindu castes and the untouchables, the political terrorists and the advocates of nonviolence. How in the world? One stunning episode toward the end of Richard Attenborough's remarkable film Ghandi reveals the essence of the Mahatma's power to moderate, reconcile, and infuse healing. Susanna Oman Younger describes the scene. He is fasting in Calcutta in the house of a Muslim. He is greatly emaciated. His friends with anxious faces are standing around him. Surawadi, the Muslim governor of Bengal, who was responsible for inciting the riots in Calcutta, is now contrite and standing at the back, solicitous and willing to do all he can to help. Rough-looking erstwhile murderers walk in and surrender their macabre weapons. At this point, the wildest looking of them all bursts in with a chapati, that is Indian bread in hand, which he almost throws on Gandhi. "Here, eat," he shouts. "I am going to hell, but I do not wish to have your death on my soul." Feeble, his voice barely rising above a whisper, Gandhi tells him, "Only God decides who goes to hell. Tell me, why do you say you are going to hell?" "I killed a small child. I bashed his head against the wall because they, the Muslims, killed my little one." Gandhi says, "I will tell you a way out of hell. You find a child whose parents have been killed. Then you and your wife bring him up as your own. Only make sure that the child is a Muslim and raise him in the Muslim faith." Disbelief and then a look of awe come over the dazed eyes. He bends low, touches Gandhi's feet with his forehead, and silently departs. Standing in the eye of the hurricane, Gandhi appears serene. Less than 20 hours before his dying day, at age 78, Gandhi speaks these words: "If someone were to end my life by putting a bullet through me, and I met his bullet with a groan and breathed my last, taking God's name, then alone would I have made good my claim, the claim that he is a man of God. If I am to die by the bullet of a madman, I must do so smiling. There must be no anger within me. God must be in my heart and on my lips." Then his death by assassination shakes the soul of an entire world. This person of prayer is shot at a public prayer meeting. It is Friday, January 30, 1948. He is en route to the daily prayer meeting which he conducts. He is assisted by his two grandnieces, Anna Bahin and Manu Bahin. Gandhi playfully calls them his walking sticks. By his own orders, no one at these gatherings shall be searched for weapons. A fanatic fellow Hindu salutes him and fires 3 shots into his frail frame. The murderer, Nathuram Godse, represents a right-wing faction which terribly resents Gandhi's vision of a democratic India that cares for Muslims. But India must love the 40 million Muslims who remain after the partition. Alas, Gandhi dies, speaking these last words, "O God." Once Gandhi was asked what he thought about civilization, "I think it would be a good idea," he is reported to have said. Today, as we still struggle toward civility, we look up to little Gandhi as a blessed visionary who helped the world to focus on the inalienable rights of the civilized human race and on the evils of colonialism, racism, and violence. He was a sacrificial, prophetic reconciler whose legacy is enormously spiritual, for this is his legacy. The antidote to the lie is the truth. The antidote to hate is love. The antidote to evil is good. As Gandhi said in a speech in London in 1931, "I can see that in the midst of darkness, light persists. Hence I gather that God is life, truth, light. He is love. He is the supreme good." Little wonder, therefore, that Gandhi's favorite Christian hymn was John Henry Newman's "Lead Kindly Light." The first verse is a commentary on Gandhi's own determined pilgrim-like faith. "Lead kindly light amid the encircling gloom. Lead thou me on, the night is dark, and I am far from home. Lead thou me on, keep thou my feet. I do not ask to see the distant scene. One step enough for me." But why would he not step more slowly? Gandhi's embittered detractors protested and protested that he would not step more slowly, patiently, and aggressively. He responded with striking acts of human commitment. This man who once condescended and talked down to his wife in an unbecomingly authoritative manner finally did so much to influence the political and public role of women. He placed women at the heart of his freedom organization, his lectures, his protests, his marches. Today, his quest for the simple life still strikes at the heart of our own materialism, acquisitiveness, self-absorption, and conspicuous consumption. Moreover, Gandhi gave to India the gift of self-respect. In the words of E. Stanley Jones, when he spoke, freedom spoke. Gandhi was India. When Gandhi was in jail, India was in jail. Therefore, following the Hindu cremation, his ashes were scattered upon India's 114 rivers, for Gandhi belonged to India. Sarah Little speaks for the world. Gandhi was one of the greatest of all modern leaders. His reverent experiments with truth witness the essence of spirit and action to us all. It is in this light that Martin Marty and Paul Ricoeur point to the hermeneutics of testimony, the credibility the heroic witness gets from being at risk. From such a witness, one gains special vision and a sense of power. And how shall we struggle to survive on this increasingly small spaceship Earth, beset by ongoing times of trial? Gandhi helps us deal with this crucial question in ways that are spiritually hopeful and pragmatically helpful. As the Christian Century editorialized at the time of his death, he lives in the Christian community around the world, which has been forced to recognize in him a more compelling embodiment of Christian practice in political relationships than it has been able to produce from its own ranks. As he lives in history, and Gandhi lives in history, as one more proof that our conflicts in the inner and outer worlds, our spiritual and political struggles are really one and must be decided together. And Jesus said, Blessed are the pure in heart. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Amen and thank you. I've been told that I might take one or two questions if you have a question or two. If not, everybody's hungry and we can go home. Next week, we'll look at the life and witness of the martyr Dietrich Bonhoeffer, and our text will be, "Deliver us from evil." Deliver us from evil. Thank you again.
Thank you.